I was making pasta on a Thursday night when the phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something in me did. "Is this Lena Foster?" a woman asked. Her voice was steady, careful, like she'd rehearsed this call. "Yes," I said. She took a breath that crackled through the speaker. "I think we're married to the same man." I actually laughed. A short, ugly sound, automatic and defensive. "Excuse me?" "Ryan Foster," she said. "My husband." The wooden spoon slipped from my hand and plopped into the boiling water. "That's impossible," I said. She didn't argue. She just whispered, "Check your messages." A ping hit my phone. If you are watching this, I would love to know where you are from. Please hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you have ever gotten a phone call that completely changed how you saw someone you thought you knew. Trust me, this story about uncovering the shocking truth about a double life is one you will not want to miss. Attachment arrived on my phone from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I opened it. It was a wedding photo. A man in a navy suit, tie slightly askew, grinning with that easy smile I knew by heart. Ryan. My Ryan. Except in this photo, he had his arm wrapped around a bride in a lace gown. Not me. The date stamp in the corner said 2018, 5 years ago, which meant when Ryan proposed to me on New Year's Eve, 2019, kneeling in the snow, tears in his eyes, he'd already been married. "Who are you?" I whispered. "I'm Natalie," she said, "and I don't want your money. I'm not trying to fight, but I think we both deserve the truth." I hung up. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. "I'm Lena, 32, living in Chicago now. I grew up in Ohio, went to Northwestern, built a decent career in marketing analytics. Pretty normal life. Met Ryan 7 years ago at a mutual friend's barbecue. He was magnetic, charming, a little self-deprecating, the kind of guy who makes you feel like you're the only one in the room. We dated for 2 years, moved in together, then married. Our wedding was small but perfect. Rooftop garden, string lights, my mom crying in the front row. He gave this speech about how I'd saved him from himself, and everyone clapped. I bought it. I bought all of it. For the record, I'm not stupid. I notice things. But when you're in love, you rearrange reality to fit the person you want them to be. And Ryan was good at feeding me just enough reassurance to make my doubts feel paranoid. Now here I was, phone in my hand, staring at proof that my entire marriage might be a performance. That night, I didn't confront him. Maybe you're thinking, "Lena, why not scream at him right then? Demand answers." But here's the thing. I wanted to see how deep it went first. I wanted to know what game I was actually playing before I put my pieces on the board. Ryan came home late, like always, kissed me on the cheek, smelled faintly of scotch and cologne I didn't recognize. "Long meeting?" I asked, stirring the sauce with shaking hands. "Yeah, investors," he said, loosening his tie. These people never stop talking. And then he smiled at me, the same smile from the wedding photo. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Natalie's words. We're married to the same man. At 2 a.m., I opened Ryan's briefcase. Contracts, files, receipts. Normal stuff. But tucked in the back pocket was a dry cleaning ticket for a shop downtown I'd never heard of. Curiosity burned hotter than fear. The next day, I drove there on my lunch break. The clerk didn't even hesitate when I asked for Ryan Foster's order. She handed me 2 freshly pressed suits, 1 navy, 1 charcoal, and a receipt. But the name printed on the account wasn't Ryan Foster. It was Daniel Foster. That was my first crack. The second came when I scrolled through our shared credit card statement. Little things jumped out. A jewelry purchase I'd never received. 2 hotel charges downtown, despite us owning an apartment 20 minutes away. Dinner at a restaurant I begged him to take me to, but he'd always claimed was too stuffy. I screenshot everything. Old habit from my job. Document first, analyze later. That evening, I texted Natalie. We need to meet. In person. She agreed without hesitation. We picked a coffee shop in Lincoln Park, neutral ground. I almost didn't recognize her when she walked in. She looked normal. Wavy brown hair, jeans, tired eyes. Not the femme fatale I'd imagined. She could have been me. Lena? She asked. I nodded. She slid her phone across the table. Dozens of photos. Ryan with her kids. Birthday parties, beach trips, family dinners. He looked comfortable, happy. He goes by Daniel with us, she said quietly. Daniel Foster. We've been married 6 years. 2 children, Mia and Caleb. He says he travels for work. But, she shook her head. Lately things haven't added up. Then I found your number on one of his statements. I stared at the screen. At Ryan, Daniel, laughing with a little girl on his shoulders. You're telling me he's your husband, but he's also mine. Yes, she said. My stomach flipped. So who the hell is he really? I sat in that coffee shop with Natalie for almost 2 hours. We compared notes like detectives piecing together a crime scene, except the crime scene was our lives. Her version of Ryan, or Daniel, as she called him, was eerily familiar. Same quirks, same favorite foods, same dumb jokes. But there were differences too. He told her he didn't drink much, but with me, scotch was a nightly ritual. He told her he hated kids, but she showed me pictures of him building Lego castles with their son. It was like he wore different masks depending on which house he was in. I'll be honest with you, I wanted to hate her. That would have been easier. But looking at her across the table, I realized she was just as blindsided as I was. Another woman trying to build a life with a man who'd built 2. When we finally stood, she touched my arm. What do we do? I didn't have an answer yet. That night, I couldn't keep pretending everything was normal. Ryan came home at 8:15, dropped his keys in the bowl by the door, and asked if I wanted Thai or pizza. And I just stared at him. At the man who might be Daniel. At the liar in my kitchen, acting like nothing was broken. Pizza's fine, I said finally, my voice flat. He didn't notice. Or maybe he noticed and just didn't care. Over the next week, I became someone else, someone colder, calculating. During the day, I dug. At night, I played the role of wife. I started with our accounts. Every login, every transfer. I built a spreadsheet like I would at work, cataloging every anomaly. There were hotel charges in Indianapolis, rental cars in St. Louis, gift shop purchases in airports where he'd never mentioned traveling. And then there was the jewelry store. A diamond bracelet, $4,800. The same week he forgot our anniversary. I checked Natalie's wrist when we met again. She was wearing it. I didn't know who to talk to. My mom? She'd tell me to leave immediately. My best friend Maya? She'd drive over with a baseball bat. I needed patience though. Proof. Confronting him too soon would just give him time to cover his tracks. So instead, I tested him. Hey, I said one night while he was brushing his teeth. Remember that trip we took to Nashville 2 years ago? He looked at me in the mirror, toothbrush hanging from his mouth. Of course. Except we'd never been to Nashville. Yeah, I continued smoothly. That little honky-tonk bar with the swing doors? God, that was fun. He nodded, spit, rinsed. Best ribs I've ever had. I smiled tightly. Me too. Every test I gave him, he passed. Too well. Like he was agreeing to a script he hadn't read. Meanwhile, Natalie and I kept trading information. She sent me screenshots of family calendars, school recitals, soccer games, events Ryan had supposedly been traveling during. I cross-checked them against his receipts. Sure enough, he was double-booked. One weekend, he told me he was in Boston for a conference. That same weekend, there were charges on our joint account at a Chuck E. Cheese in Evanston. 2 realities, overlapping like bad Photoshop. The breaking point came when Natalie texted me a photo. It was Ryan at a backyard barbecue, beer in hand, grinning at the camera. And in the background, clear as day, was me. The photo was time-stamped the same day he'd taken me to a friend's baby shower. He'd left early, saying he had to prep for a Monday meeting. Apparently, he'd gone straight to her house. You ever feel your blood go cold? That was me, staring at that photo. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. He was splitting his time between two families, two identities, two sets of lies. And suddenly, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I called Maya. She showed up with 2 bottles of wine and a notebook. "All right," she said, plopping onto my couch. "Tell me everything." So I did. When I finished, she closed the notebook with a snap. "This is insane, but it's also criminal. You know that, right? Bigamy isn't just sleazy, it's illegal. And if he's funneling money between accounts, that could be fraud." I nodded. "I want to nail him, not just leave him. I want the truth nailed down so hard he can't wriggle out. Then we need a trap," she said, eyes gleaming. "Something he can't talk his way out of." The idea was simple, brutal, and perfect. Dinner, both wives, one room. Let him choke on the truth in real time. I reached out to Natalie. She hesitated at first. She didn't want to traumatize her kids. But eventually she agreed. "We deserve to see him fall apart," she said. We set a date. Saturday evening, 7 p.m. The days leading up to it were excruciating. I had to live with him, eat with him, sleep next to him, while knowing exactly what was coming. Every time he kissed me, I wanted to scream. Every time he laughed, I wanted to cry. But I held it in. Because the bigger the performance, the bigger the collapse. Saturday came. I set the table, poured wine, and waited. At 7:05, the doorbell rang. Ryan walked in, carrying flowers like he always did when he was late. "What's the occasion?" he asked, kissing my cheek. Then he froze, because there, standing in my living room, was Natalie, his other wife. He went pale, really pale, like the blood drained right out of him. "Ryan?" Natalie said softly. "Or should I say Daniel?" He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. For the first time in years, he had no script. "What is this?" he croaked. "This," I said coldly, "is the truth. Sit down." He didn't move. His eyes darted between us, calculating exits. "Sit down." He sat. "Explain," Natalie demanded. He rubbed his temples. "Look, I can explain." "Then explain," I shot back. He sighed, leaned back in his chair. And then, like he was telling us the weather forecast, he said, "I built 2 lives." We just stared. "I met you both around the same time," he continued. "And I couldn't choose, so I didn't." 6 years, Natalie whispered. 6 years, Ryan. We have children. I know. You married me, I said. I know. You lied to both of us. I know. He sounded almost bored, like he'd rehearsed this. But then he added something I didn't expect. "And it's not just about love. There are financial reasons, too." I stiffened. "What kind of financial reasons?" His eyes flicked away. "Nothing you need to worry about," which of course meant it was exactly what I needed to worry about. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just a cheating scandal. This was bigger, messier, more dangerous. Because if you know me, you know numbers are my language. I can smell financial fraud from a mile away. And suddenly, all those anomalies on our statements weren't just signs of infidelity. They were signs of something much darker. But here's the thing. He didn't beg. He didn't plead. He didn't cry. He looked us both in the eyes and said, "You'll thank me one day." And I swear, I almost lunged across the table. After that dinner, nothing was the same. Ryan, or Daniel, or whatever his name really was, walked out of my apartment with his flowers still clutched in his hand. He didn't apologize. He didn't rage. He just left. The silence he left behind was deafening. Natalie sat at my table, staring into her untouched wine, shaking her head like she could rattle herself awake from this nightmare. 6 years, she kept whispering. 6 years. I wanted to comfort her, but I felt like I was hollow. You ever get so angry you feel like your bones might rattle apart? That was me. Finally, I said, "He mentioned financial reasons. Did you catch that?" Her eyes lifted. "Yeah, what the hell was that about?" That was the thread. And if there's one thing I know how to do, it's pull a thread until the whole sweater unravels. The next morning, I called Maya. "He admitted it?" she asked, breathless. "Yeah, both wives, both lives. But there's more. He's hiding something financial." "Of course he is," she muttered. "Men like that don't build two households out of love. It's leverage, money, control." "Then I'm going to find out." For days, I combed through everything. Bank accounts, tax returns, even the files he thought he'd hidden on his laptop. Pro tip: don't marry a data analyst if you're planning on running two lives. We know how to look under the hood. And slowly, the pattern emerged. Small transfers, repeated, always just under reporting thresholds. Between my joint account with him, Natalie's, and at least 3 shell accounts in Delaware, Cayman, and get this, Liechtenstein. Natalie had no idea. She thought their finances were just tight. Meanwhile, thousands were disappearing each month. She went silent. For who? That was the question. We brought Maya into the circle. She spread receipts and screenshots across my dining table like a detective. "Look at this," she said, tapping a line of transfers. "They always land the day before he travels. Then 2 days later, poof, shifted into investment accounts under another name." "Which name?" I asked. "Daniel Webb." My stomach dropped. Webb was Natalie's maiden name. He'd stolen her identity to build his shell empire. It wasn't just us he was betraying, it was the law. And that's when Maya leaned back, crossed her arms, and said, "We need professionals." I hesitated. "Like a lawyer?" "No, Lena, like the FBI." Now, before you think I'm crazy for going to the feds, imagine this. You've just discovered your husband's been running 2 families, laundering money, and using false identities. That's not just betrayal. That's felony territory. So Maya called a contact, her cousin's ex, who worked in financial crimes. We arranged a meeting at a diner outside the city. Agent Clark looked like he'd stepped out of central casting. Tired eyes, cheap suit, coffee addiction. He listened as we laid everything out. The receipts, the transfers, the aliases. Finally, he rubbed his chin. "Ladies, this is serious. If what you're showing me is accurate, your husband's not just a bigamist. He's part of a larger fraud ring." "A ring?" I asked. Clark nodded. "We've been tracking a group that funnels money through fake identities and dual households. It creates alibis, complicates paper trails. He fits the profile." Natalie's face drained of color. "So what do we do?" Clark slid a card across the table. "You help us. We'll build a case. But you need to keep playing your roles. Act normal. Let him think you're still in his pocket. Can you do that?" I looked at Natalie. She looked at me. And slowly, we nodded. So that's how I found myself living in a spy novel. Every text from Ryan became evidence. Every receipt, every call, every flimsy excuse. I documented it all. He still came home to me 3 nights a week, acting like nothing had happened. Cooking pasta, rubbing my shoulders, even talking about maybe trying for a baby soon. I wanted to scream, but instead, I smiled and said, "That sounds wonderful," because the trap was closing. One night, lying in bed, I turned to him. "Ryan?" "Yeah," he murmured, scrolling his phone. "What's the worst thing you've ever lied about?" He chuckled, not looking up. "That time I told you I liked your haircut when I didn't." I smiled in the dark, teeth clenched. If only he knew. Natalie played her part too. She cooked dinners, tucked in the kids, let him kiss her cheek goodnight. Meanwhile, she passed me screenshots of his messages, voicemails, bank notifications. And every Friday, We fed it all to Clark. The moment everything shifted came in the form of a single receipt. Ryan had told me he was going to Dallas for a conference, but his corporate card showed a charge in Montreal. Clark's team traced it. A wire transfer of $200,000 landed in an offshore account the same day. That was enough. Time to move, Clark told us. We're setting up a sting. I thought I'd feel relieved. Instead, I felt like I was going to vomit. Because here's the part no one tells you about betrayal. Even when you want justice, part of you is still tangled up in love. Ryan wasn't just a fraud. He was also the man who made me soup when I had the flu, who danced with me in our kitchen, who knew exactly how I liked my coffee. I hated him, but I also hated that I'd loved him. The sting was set for a Tuesday. Clark's team arranged it so Ryan would think he was meeting an investor downtown. In reality, it was an undercover agent. My role? Get him there. Keep him unsuspecting. The night before, I cooked his favorite meal. Steak frites, Malbec, the works. He ate with gusto, kissed my forehead, and said, "You're the best thing that ever happened to me." And I smiled, because the next day, he'd be in handcuffs. The morning came. He dressed sharp. Navy suit, cufflinks, cologne. "Wish me luck," he said, grabbing his briefcase. "Always," I replied. And then I watched him walk out the door for the last time. That afternoon, Clark called. "It's done. We have him." I exhaled so hard I nearly collapsed. They'd arrested him in a hotel suite, laptop open, cash on the table. He hadn't resisted, just raised his hands, calm as ever. When Clark described it, I almost laughed. Of course he'd been calm. He'd lived 2 lives for years. What was one more mask to put on? That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in the quiet. Natalie called, crying. "The kids, how do I explain this to them?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But at least now we know the truth." She sniffled. "You saved me." "No," I said. "We saved each other." Here's the thing, though. Catching him didn't end the story. Because betrayal doesn't vanish with an arrest. It lingers. It infects everything. I'd look at my wedding photos and feel sick. I'd smell his cologne on a scarf and want to throw up. Healing wasn't immediate. It wasn't cinematic. It was slow, ugly, and lonely. But it was also freeing. And yet, something still nagged at me. Because the night before the sting, as he'd kissed my forehead, he'd whispered, "One day, you'll thank me." And I couldn't stop wondering, thank him for what? The day after Ryan's arrest, I woke up to silence. No clink of his mug in the kitchen, no smell of coffee drifting down the hall, no hum of his favorite podcast playing while he shaved. Just quiet. I thought it would feel like peace. Instead, it felt like standing in the wreckage after a hurricane. The storm had passed, but everything around me was destroyed. Natalie called me first thing. Her voice was hoarse. "They came to the house," she whispered. "The agents. They searched everything. The kids, they saw." I closed my eyes. "I'm so sorry." I kept telling them Daddy's away for work. "But my son, he's 10, Lena." He looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're lying." I didn't know what to say. Because she was right. Her life had imploded with witnesses. Mine had crumbled in private. We were both living in the aftermath, just in different shades. That week blurred together. Headlines started popping up. Investment banker arrested in double life fraud. Photos of Ryan in handcuffs flooded the internet. Neighbors looked at me with pity, coworkers with fascination. At the grocery store, 2 women whispered in the produce aisle. One of them caught my eye and froze. I walked away without buying a thing. It was like I'd become a character in someone else's scandal. Agent Clark called me into his office to sign statements. "Your evidence was crucial," he said. "You should know that." I nodded, numb. He hesitated, then added, "This wasn't just a personal betrayal. You helped take down a whole operation. We estimate nearly $50 million laundered through schemes like his. Because of you, that stops. 50 million. And yet, the number that haunted me most was two. Two families, two women, two lives. At night, I couldn't sleep. I'd lie in the dark replaying conversations in my head. The way he'd laughed at my jokes. The way he'd tucked my hair behind my ear. The way he'd once told me, "You're my only truth." Was any of it real? Or was it all just rehearsal for a part he was playing? You want the truth? Sometimes I wished I'd never found out. Ignorance would have spared me this hollow ache. But then I'd picture Natalie's kids, or the money siphoned from our accounts. And I'd remember, truth hurts, but lies kill. 2 weeks after the arrest, I went to the storage unit with Clark. Boxes stacked floor to ceiling, all meticulously labeled. Bank statements, IDs, photos, even notebooks full of scripts he'd written for himself. Lines like, "Remember Lena hates lilies, always buy sunflowers. Natalie prefers pasta al dente, not soft. Say I love you every night before sleep, even if tired." He'd reduced us to bullet points, roles to memorize, performances to nail. I thought I might vomit. Clark laid a hand on my shoulder. "This proves intent. It'll put him away for decades." I didn't answer. I just stared at the scripts until the words blurred through tears. The trial came months later. Natalie and I sat side by side in the courtroom. Two women bound not by choice, but by betrayal. When they brought him in, shackled, wearing an orange jumpsuit, my breath caught. He looked smaller, diminished. But when his eyes found mine, he smirked. That same smirk he'd worn the night he proposed. The prosecutor laid it all out. Fraud, identity theft, money laundering, bigamy. The jurors shifted uncomfortably as the evidence piled higher and higher. I testified, voice steady. Natalie testified, tears streaking her cheeks. Maya testified too, showing how she'd helped piece together the financial puzzle. Ryan never took the stand. His lawyer spun a story about misguided ambition and a man in over his head, but the jury didn't buy it. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing day, he looked straight at me as the judge read 40 years. And then he said it again, loud enough for the whole court to hear. "One day, you'll thank me." Thank him? For what? The words followed me out of that courtroom, into my car, into my dreams. Months passed. I tried to rebuild. I sold the apartment, changed my number, started over in a small loft across town. Work became my lifeline. My boss, bless her, handed me cases that kept my brain too busy to spiral. But every so often, I'd glance at my reflection and wonder if I even knew myself anymore. Because when someone you love wears a mask that well, it makes you question your own reality. And then, one evening, Natalie showed up at my door with a manila envelope. "This came in the mail," she said. "No return address." Inside were papers, copies of accounts we hadn't seen before, accounts in our names, mine and hers, holding money. Lots of it. "Why would he?" I whispered. Natalie's hands trembled. "Maybe it's what he meant. Maybe this is what we're supposed to thank him for." Turns out, Ryan had hidden not just stolen funds, but reserves. Quiet accounts in Switzerland and the Caymans, structured under shell corporations, but tied to us as beneficiaries. It was dirty money, sure, but technically, it was in our names. Legally, ours. I met with Clark again. He confirmed it. "It's restitution," he said grimly. "Twisted, but real. He wanted to ensure you were taken care of." Taken care of by the man who'd shattered us. I wrestled with it for weeks. Was using that money letting him win? Or was rejecting it letting him control me even from prison? In the end, I chose survival. I used it to pay off debts, help Natalie set up a college fund for her kids, invest in therapy, in rebuilding, in starting a consulting business of my own. If betrayal had burned my life to ash, then this, ironically, was the seed money to grow something new. That business took off. Women came to me with suspicions of infidelity, of fraud, of secrets. I helped them follow the money, find the truth. And every time I handed a woman proof, every time I watched her reclaim her life, I thought, maybe this is what he meant. Not that I should thank him, but that I should thank the fire for forcing me to rise. 1 year after his sentencing, I visited him. I didn't plan to, but curiosity gnawed at me until I couldn't resist. He sat across the plexiglass, thinner, hair graying at the temples. But those eyes, still sharp, still calculating. "Lena," he said, smiling faintly, "you look good." I stared. Why the accounts? Why leave us anything? He leaned back. "Because I knew the truth would destroy you, both of you. And I thought, maybe this way, at least you'd have something left." "You ruined my life," I snapped. "No," he said softly. "I gave you a new one. Look at you. Stronger, sharper, building something real. Would you have done that if I hadn't forced your hand?" I hung up the phone, walked out, never went back. Because here's the thing. I don't owe my strength to him. I owe it to myself. Today, I'm 34. I live in a sunny apartment filled with plants. I run my own firm. I drink coffee in silence without bracing for lies. Natalie and I talk weekly. Our bond is unshakable now. Maya's become my right hand at work. And slowly, piece by piece, I've reclaimed my joy. Do I still wake up some nights replaying his smirk? Yes. Do I still wonder what was real and what was performance? Of course. But it doesn't own me anymore. And to you, listening, if you've ever been lied to like that, if you've ever felt your whole world tilt because someone you trusted wore a mask, let me tell you this. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are not defined by their betrayal. The truth is brutal, yes, but it's also a key. And once you twist it, you're free. If this story of calculated revenge kept you hooked until the very end, hit that like button right now. Don't miss more gripping stories of betrayal and justice. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.